Picture this, it's 1987. You've just rolled off the dealership lot in your brand new Chevrolet Camaro Z28, a machine that exudes power and attitude. The T-tops are off, the warm summer sun kisses your skin, and the road ahead feels like it's yours to conquer. You pull up to a red light, feeling invincible, ready to flex the muscle under your hood at a moment's notice. Then from the corner of your eye, you see it, an all-black silhouette creeping up beside you. At first glance, it looks like a Buick, but this isn't your grandmother's Buick. Something about its sinister, blacked-out look tells you this car means business. It has subtle modifications, blacked-out trim, aggressive stance, and the unmistakable aura of a street sleeper. You scoff. This should be easy. After all, you're in a Z28 Camaro, a proper V8 muscle car. The light turns green, and you slam the throttle, expecting to dust the unsuspecting Buick. But to your shock, it doesn't just keep up, it surges ahead. The sound of a turbo spooling fills the air as the black Buick pulls harder and harder. Within seconds, it's already a full car length ahead, leaving you in disbelief. You ease off the gas, staring at the rapidly shrinking taillights. What just happened? How did a Buick, a car with a V6 no less, just walk your brand new Camaro? You shake your head, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it had some big block swap, or maybe the driver got an unfair jump. But the truth is far simpler. You just got introduced to the Buick GNX, the turbocharged terror that changed the game. A turbocharged idea, the unexpected birth of a legend. To understand how the Buick Grand National and GNX came to be, we have to rewind to the mid-1970s, during an era when American muscle cars were in decline due to rising fuel costs and increasing emissions regulations. Ironically, the roots of the Grand National can be traced back to an unlikely place, a Boy Scouts Explorer program. In 1973, an engineer named Ken Baker, who worked for Buick, started a hands-on automotive work-study project for local youth. As part of this initiative, he decided to experiment with turbocharging Buick's 3.8-liter V6 engine. At the time, Buick had recently reintroduced the V6 as a fuel-efficient alternative to the thirsty V8s that had dominated American roads for decades. With a mix of junkyard parts, ingenuity, and determination, Baker and his team managed to build a turbocharged version of Buick's 231 cubic inch V6 and stuffed it into a Skylark donor car. What started as an educational project quickly caught the attention of Lloyd Roos, the chief engineer at Buick. Recognizing the potential, Buick's top brass shifted internal resources to further develop this turbocharged V6, seeing it as a way to offer solid performance without sacrificing fuel efficiency. At the time, turbocharging was uncommon in American production cars. Yes, there were previous attempts, such as the Chevy Corvair Monza Turbo in the 1960s and the rare Yenko Turbo Vega, but these were exceptions rather than the norm. Buick's decision to fully commit to the turbocharged V6 as a viable performance platform was a bold move that no one saw coming. And it all started with a group of Boy Scouts. The first turbocharged Buicks in their Indy 500 debut Buick, with 20 pounds of boost, it produced around 300 horsepower, which was serious power for 1976, especially from a V6 engine. Buick had proved that a turbocharged six-cylinder could hang with the V8s. But it wasn't until 1978 that the public could finally get their hands on turbocharged Buicks. Initially, these engines were designed more for a balance of fuel economy and power, rather than outright performance. The first-generation Buick Turbo 6s, which appeared in production models between 1978 and 1980, produced a respectable 165 horsepower and 265 pound-feet of torque. However, these early versions still used carburetors, limiting their tuning potential. By 1980, Buick was ready for something bigger, and that's when the Grand National was born. Enter the Grand National, Buick's boldest move. Yet the first Buick Grand National debuted in 1982, named after Buick's recent NASCAR championship victory. However, it wasn't exactly the beast that people now associate with the name. The 1982 Grand National was little more than an appearance package on a Buick Regal, featuring a two-tone silver and black paint job and some NASCAR-inspired decals. It wasn't a performance monster yet. For 1983, Buick skipped the Grand National altogether, but when it returned in 1984, it was an entirely different animal. Gone were the gimmicky decals and two-tone paint. The new Grand National came in one color and one color only, black. The new blacked-out Regal was the meanest-looking Buick ever built. exuding an attitude that had been missing from the brand since the days of the GS 455 muscle cars. But it wasn't just about looks. This car had serious muscle under the hood. The 1984 Grand National featured a new, high-tech multi-point fuel injection system, a revised turbocharger, and an electronically controlled ignition system. These upgrades gave the turbocharged 3.8-liter V6 a total of 200 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque, numbers that put it neck and neck with the Camaro Z28 and Trans Am of the same era. However, Buick wasn't done yet. Over the next 3 years, the Grand National only got stronger. By 1986, it received a larger intercooler and a new aluminum intake manifold, boosting power to 235 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. And by 1987, it reached its final form, 245 horsepower and 355 pound-feet of torque. At this point, the Grand National wasn't just competing with Camaros and Mustangs, it was outrunning Corvettes. But then, Buick did something even more insane. They unleashed the Buick GNX, the performance upgrades that made the GNX a monster. The standard Grand National was already crazy fast for the time, but Buick knew they needed to push the limits even further. So here's what they did. The turbocharger was completely upgraded with a larger Garrett T3 unit, giving it significantly more boost pressure. A ceramic impeller allowed for quicker spool times, reducing turbo lag and increasing throttle response. A massive intercooler helped keep intake temperatures down, meaning more power, more often. The transmission was strengthened with a custom torque, converter, and valve body designed to handle the increased horsepower without braking. The exhaust system was revised for better flow, giving the GNX a menacing, deep turbo whistle that was unmistakable. And of course, the power numbers were underrated on paper. Officially, Buick rated the GNX at 276 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque, but real-world tests showed it was making well over 300 horsepower. Quarter-mile king, the GNX offers the world now. Let's talk about speed. In 1987, the GNX could run the quarter mile in 12.7 seconds at 113 miles per hour. To put that into perspective, let's compare that to its so-called competition. 1987 Chevrolet Corvette, 13.4 seconds, 1987. Ford Mustang 5.0, 14.2 seconds. 1987 Chevrolet Camaro, IROC Z, 14.5 seconds. That's right, this turbocharged Buick sedan was quicker than the Corvette, Mustang, and Camaro of its era. It was even faster than a Ferrari Testarossa in the quarter mile. That's how insane the GNX was, and that's why it earned its legendary nickname, the Darth Vader of muscle cars. The end of an era, why Buick walked away from performance cars. After the GNX, Buick never built another high-performance car like it again. Why? Because Buick wasn't supposed to be making muscle cars in the first place. The brand was historically known for making luxury sedans for older buyers, and the fact that they created something as wild as the Grand National and GNX was almost an accident. By the late 1980s, General Motors refocused Buick on making comfortable, high-end sedans, leaving performance to brands like Chevrolet and Pontiac. That's why the Buick GNX was a one-time phenomenon, a perfect storm of engineering, innovation, and rebellion against corporate norms. And today, the Grand National and GNX are some of the most sought-after collector cars in the world. The legend will never die. The Buick Grand National and GNX were cars that weren't supposed to exist. Buick was never meant to be a performance brand, yet they built one of the most feared street cars of all time. They took a humble V6, slapped on a turbo, and embarrassed the biggest V8 muscle cars of their era. And because of that, the Buick GNX remains one of the greatest muscle cars ever built. A car that came out of nowhere, changed the game, and disappeared just as quickly. It was a car that looked like a villain, but became a hero. And even today, if you ever see one pull up next to you at a red light, just remember, it's already too late. What do you think about the Buick Grand National and GNX? Would you take one over a classic Mustang or Camaro? Let us know in the comments.